All right, everyone, welcome back to the Community Conversation. Today, I have Stephanie Nephew on our show today. Stephanie is a avid 5 a.m.er. She crushes it. She's been coming to Prototype since, I think, February-ish 2021, right before the pandemic, which is something I definitely want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But super excited to have her on today. Just love having her in class. She's just awesome. She also introduced me to her sister, who is the founder of the TMI Project, which is one of the organizations that I've given money to through the Social Capitalist. So just tons of cool stuff here. And I'm just like super excited to have Stephanie on today. Steph, thanks for being on the Community Conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Totally. So let's just kick it off because, like I said, you started coming to Prototype in like February 2021. And then basically like a month later, like we went into shutdown mode, right? Like the whole world basically did, but you continued to like stick with it and like be with us. So anyway, like why don't we just kind of start there? How did you find Prototype and like kind of walk us through your journey so far?
Yeah, I think I had one class prior to the shutdown, one group class. So I will say it was a little tricky to stay with it because when joining Zoom calls, I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt like it was worth continuing. So it was good. We moved to Westboro about, I don't know, 6 years ago. And when I had moved here, prior to, I'd been doing a lot of triathlons. And I was sort of, ready to try something different, something new, which was why I was interested in trying CrossFit.
Mm-hmm. And where did you move from? Where were you guys living before?
We were in Mansfield, Mass.
That's right. Right next to my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Attleboro.
Yeah.
That's right. And then so you only did one class, which is like crazy because like it does take a few classes to kind of get into the swing of things. So what was it like kind of being on the virtual side? And then I know we think you did some like individual programming and like workouts and stuff like that. So like what was that just experience like, just kind of, and then like being able to get back into person like eventually, like, and kind of get in person with like the community and start building those relationships? Because like I know it was one of the things a lot of people talk about is like the community side of it. So you actually took like a virtual side and then got into like the in-person side.
Yeah, and I think I was looking for a community, so it was a little bit unfortunate, to have the lockdown. I think the Zoom sessions were challenging partly because I just wasn't sort of familiar with some of the movements and also the people. So I did end up doing independent, like personal sort of independent work, which was great. You kind of reached out, noticed I hadn't been doing some of the Zooms, and we kind of came up with a different plan. And then I was super psyched once we were able to work out outside. And working out is really like, it keeps me mentally stable. So especially during that time, I knew it was super important to continue exercising. So
Totally. Give us some background too. Like I know you mentioned you were doing triathlons before. Like what was your training like before getting into CrossFit and like kind of the group classes?
So I kind of went from, I'd started exercising, as early as, I guess, high school, really into running, distance running, had some really great coaches, both in high school and college. And just I like to be outdoors. So spent a lot of time trail running and hiking. And through graduate school, 30s, I was doing a lot of trail races, 10 to 20 mile sort of distances was sort of what I was sort of doing mostly, and just enjoyed like the trail running. There's a great New England trail running community, lots of races and different opportunities. And so I was doing that. But my hips don't really like to do a lot of running. And so I was constantly just trying to manage like injury control. And it was, as I got older, it continued to get more challenging. And so I switched to triathlons partly just to give my body a break from running all the time. I had never swam before. And so I had to figure that out. I'd had this race that I really wanted to do. It's called the Survival of the Schwangunks. And it's in New Paltz, New York, the town where I grew up. And it's just this crazy triathlon where you bike first 30 miles, and then you do a series of lake swims. And between the lake swims, you trail run. So it ends up being like 2.5 miles of swimming and 18 miles of trail running. And you have to swim with your shoes and all your stuff because you're like in the middle of the woods. And so it was something that I had watched people do all growing up, and was something I really wanted to like have on my list of accomplishments. So for like 5 years, I focused on like figuring out how to be able to swim 2.5 miles. So that kept me busy for a while.
That's awesome. What a cool race. I mean, most triathlons, it's like you're starting with the swim, right? And then you're getting into the bike, and then you're finishing with the run, right? And then so like I can see how that, if you're doing triathlons over and over and that's like the format, I know the terrain changes, but like what an interesting thing. Like you start with the bike, you go into the lake, you swim a little bit, then find a trail, run, jump in, and you have to stay with the soggy shoes the entire time. I'm sure. Is it like in the middle of the summer, or is this like cold? Like I can imagine that being miserable, like if you're in your
It's in
soaking wet
September.
clothes.
Yeah, it's in September, and it depends. Like the year we did it, the one lake was really pretty cold. So there were a number of people that ended up not making it because they just got too cold. But yeah, I mean, it ends up being, there's a lot of like the transition from one exercise to another can be challenging on your legs. And so just the idea that you run, swim, run, swim, run, swim, run is it's just like a different challenge, but it was awesome. It was probably one of my best, like one of my most memorable experiences, like doing something physical. It was great.
That's cool. Any plans on doing it again, or do we hang up the laces or whatever? I don't know what the saying is, but
yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I would do that race again. It's one of those things that I just sort of like to take on a new challenge and maybe do it. But I haven't been, I haven't had any sort of triathlon desires recently. So we'll see. Who knows?
So like so the background's it's endurance, right? So triathlons, trail running, and then didn't you row?
I did row in college. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So I remember when I think we sat down for your like no swim intro session. This was like over a year and a half ago. We were talking about that a little bit. Like maybe give us some kind of the background on that. Like where'd you go to school? Like how'd you get into rowing? Like because there's a kind of a cool transition of like how you dipped your toes into basically every endurance like element, which is really neat. So maybe kind of share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went to Hobart and William Smith College in Geneva, New York. I had never rowed before. It was it's a Division III school, and it was, I feel so fortunate that I had the opportunity to row there because we had an amazing coach, Jim Joy. He had been the former Canadian Olympic coach, and he would take sort of just like these scrappy crews and make them really, really strong. Like we were the first Division III school to be invited Division I championships.
That's cool.
So we like ended up having a really successful couple years. So, and he was also just a unique coach. We did meditation every day. We did visualizations. Cool. Like he had, and that was a lot of years now ago when it wasn't so popular. So it was just cool. I had a really great experience rowing.
That's awesome. First Division III program to compete in Division I. That sounds pretty like, that's awesome. That's amazing. So the Hobart, my father-in-law went to Hobart as well.
Oh, okay.
Just throwing that out there. I don't know if you met John, but it sounds like the coach was way ahead of his time in terms of thinking of like the mental side versus just the physical side, which is just it's really cool because like you said, now that's like it's more common that like especially on the visualization like side of it. Like the I don't know if a lot of people that are listening know kind of like that training for crew and rowing, but like that's like pretty intense, like early morning double sessions, like you know how to push yourself like pretty hard. Like any of those workouts, anything that comes to mind that like maybe like it's in the back of your head, like, oh my God, like that was the hardest workout I've ever done. Like any of those like things sticking
I
out to
mean, some of it was just the quantity of workouts. We worked out usually 11 practices a week.
wow.
We had 5 a.m. practices 5 days a week, and almost every day was doubles. So it's just like the quantity was a lot, but we did have these like, which is sometimes I get like, I think I get PTSD when I get on the erg now in the gym, because we'd have these 20-minute erg tests were
Yeah.
sort of what we would do. And what your distance could be in 20 minutes was sort of like a big benchmark, like so, and people just like on a regular basis would be like vomiting afterwards. Like it just was gross. It was really hard.
just throwing up, getting back on, getting after it. Like, yeah, I can picture that in my head. So now I know where the habit of working out at 5 a.m. Came from. That seems just has stuck with you for quite a bit. 20-minute max distance on the rower. I might have to mention that to John, who might have to program that. I know we just did the
Oh
500.
God, please don't.
I know we just did a 500-meter test, but this is a little bit more on the endurance side. We'll call it the Stephanie. We'll just do
No,
20
I will
minutes.
definitely not be attending.
All right, we know which one you're cherry picking. Well, one thing I'm curious about, because you had such like an endurance background with all these sorts of things. Now you're starting to like get into like strength training, right? Like, I mean, CrossFit kind of combines the elements of strength and conditioning. Like, what's been that transition like? And like, what, is it stuff, do you like that more? Do you not like it? Like, I'm curious, like what your perspective is.
I think at the beginning, it just felt so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't feel like, I feel like for endurance exercising, you feel like really in control in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of the intensity is so high that it just feels different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it took some time getting used to, but I feel like as I get older, like I can see how important the strength training is, just to keep like muscle mass. And I just feel like just sort of listening to my body, it's felt like it's been really important to make the shift.
It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, I'm always curious, like there's folks that do CrossFit because they don't want to run and they don't like the endurance stuff, but they know that it's important to kind of mix it in. And then there's like the flip side with like the folks that come from on the endurance side and they know they need the strength side. So I'm always curious kind of like on the perspective. And one thing you mentioned is like kind of take on new challenges. I'm curious, like, what your current like goals are, fitness goals, or like what are the things that you look forward to, or what are the things on like maybe a bucket list or anything like that?
I feel like most recently the shift has been to like take on some big like hiking challenges.
Mm,
So less of like competition and just more being able to do things. My family, we spend a lot of time in the White Mountains and different like hikes. And so being able to do some of that and maybe pushing to do some bigger hikes. I don't know, it might have been a year or two ago, we did the presidential traverse in a day, and that was really fun. So I think it's kind of those types of things now, and it's cool because I can do them with Gavin and Aiden, and
that's right.
it's a good family activity, which is nice.
Two things. One, so I did the Prezi in one day as well, with a few guys from the gym. I'm trying to remember when that was. It was when I had the mustache, so it had to have been 2020. The COVID stash. That was no joke. The
It's
weather
no
is
joke.
like,
Yeah.
it's like but like, I mean, you never know what you're gonna get for weather, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you got to get there so early. Like the rocks are so slick. Like climbing up there, I forget which one. It might have been whatever the second one was that we climbed up. Like we were going down, it was just all rocks, and I was certain that I was gonna like break my ankle, but like, and then like knowing what you have to wear and like bringing
Yeah.
food and not bringing too much because the more stuff you have, the heavier it is, and the more it's like, yeah. Anyway, so I totally respect that. It's so cool that you guys did that in one day. I did it. It was so hard. I think I slept for like 12 or 15 straight hours after doing it? Because
So
it's like 20 miles. Like
it's
it's
20 miles, but a
yeah,
lot of elevation. Yeah.
totally,
Like a
totally.
lot of technical climbing. So my husband that's like his thing is like ultra running. So like
Mm.
he at one
Mm.
point had the fastest known time for the presidential
Oh
traverse
my God.
in 4.5 hours. So,
Wow.
mm,
Yeah. So now that you mentioned that, the group that we went with, like there was two groups. One was our friend Jesse, him and his buddies from Vermont. So Jesse used to live here and then he moved. He's a physical therapist, used to be one of our coaches. Awesome guy. And then a few guys from the gym, and then we met up. And the guys that he brought, all they had was a fanny pack for like the day. And
yeah,
like they were running this, like they were like, all right, ready, 3, 2, 1, let's go. And it's like 4:30 in the morning. We're going up Monroe, for whatever the first one is. I
yeah,
can't remember.
yeah. I know. I never remember all of the things.
And
Yeah,
they're just going. And we're like, whoa, we did not sign up to run this thing. And so needless to say that like it's funny because as you go through the trails, you see people running it, and it's like they're moving. So 4.5 hours, that is unbelievable. 4.5
yeah.
hours.
The day that I did it with Gavin and a couple other friends. Ben did it out and back.
Wow. That's incredible. I gotta meet your husband. I gotta shake his hand. That's like so
So
impressive. That's
So it's
awesome.
funny when you say like I'm an endurance runner, or endurance person. I actually half the time I never really think of it that way because he does like double the distance.
Well,
So
that's another category.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
a whole
yeah,
nother
yeah,
category. Oh, it's cool because you mentioned Gavin and Aiden, and like your kids have been able to come in here and like work out and like do some of the
yeah.
kid stuff that we do. One of the things that always like puts a smile on my face when you see like families working out together, or at least like
Yeah.
you being able to share that. Like, what's that kind of experience been like, or kind of into getting them into kind of like the fitness at such a young age and being able to share that with them?
I mean, that's always been super important to us. Like, I mean, they've been out on hikes and trails since they were little. Um, Neither one of my children are into sort of traditional sports, I guess, if you call them that,
Mhm.
like ball. So excited about and get bike with my. So it's really nice to share the interest of each have something that we can chat with him about.
Mm. You broke up for like maybe 15 seconds. I think it was like an internet thing. I don't know if you can hear me still, Steph, but like I caught like the tail end of
Yeah,
it. I don't
I
know if you
saw
could,
that.
I don't know if you can repeat just what you were saying, but I know what you started to say was like how it's so important. Your kids are not into kind of the traditional sports, but like, they're into like the hiking, trail running,
Um,
that sort of thing.
for into mountain biking.
That's right.
As
That's
it
right.
still, it feels like it's still like choppy. Oh, yeah. Um, I was saying that it's fun to be able to talk to him about CrossFit because most of the time he's talking to my husband about biking, and I have no interest in biking. So it's kind of nice that we've got this thing that we can connect about as well. So
So cool. I love it. It's so cool. It's so cool. I'm a firm believer that like getting kids into like exercise and build a good relationship with that earlier on, that stuff will stick. Just like working out at 5 a.m. in college for rowing workouts will get you working out at 5 in the morning, when you're out of school. So building those good habits is so important.
yeah.
So what I want to get into next is our little finale here, our two truths and a lie. For
Okay.
those folks that are listening, this is like a staple of these community conversations. But essentially, Steph's gonna make three statements. Two are true, one's a lie. I gotta pick which one's the lie. I've stopped keeping track of my record at this point because it's so bad, but
Okay.
I tend to stink at it. Now, with that being said, I'm confident I'm gonna try to get this answer correct. So anyway, lay it on me. Tell me, just say all three statements, and I gotta try to
Okay.
figure it out.
Okay. So the first statement is that I've ice climbed in the Swiss Alps.
Mhm.
The second statement is I've run a 50K trail race. And the third statement is I collected dried worms as a child.
Collected dried worms. All right. All right. This is how my my ladders of inference, my how I'm gonna think out loud. That's basically all right. So collected dried worms as a child. That sounds so specific that it has to be true, but I'm not gonna say that quite yet. The 50K
Okay.
trail run is interesting to me because I feel like since you've been doing that, like that would be true, but it's also like so obvious kind of that maybe it's a lie. And then the ice climbing in the Swiss Alps, like we didn't talk about ice climbing like at all, but it doesn't surprise me that you would do that because you're so into the outdoors. But like the other part of that is that you could have ice climbed, but not in the Swiss Alps. It could have been some other place. All these are interesting. I'm gonna say the lie is the 50K trail run.
You're good.
Oh,
Yeah.
did I get it? Yes, yes. I knew. All right,
I've
let's
wanted
go.
to, but I've never done it yet.
Okay, so I know we didn't talk about that. I know we spent a lot of time talking about the endurance stuff. I knew like you're into the trail running, but I'm like, that seems so obvious that it has to be a lie. Okay. All right. So with that being said, sounds like that's something that you do want to do, but I'm like fascinated. First of all, I don't even know where to start, but like collected the dried worms as a child. So basically like you just pick like the ones that gotten fried by the sun, you'd pick up and put in like
No, I would dry them. I would dry them
you dry them
in a
out.
shoe, dry them out, put them in a shoebox in my father's shed. Have no idea why. Still, my sisters are curious about that.
So like how many worms we talking? Like like a couple dozen, like a couple thousand, like
I don't really remember the details. I mean, and I think it was short-lived, collection, but yeah, it was one of those things that continues to haunt me in the stories from my sisters.
well, you just shared it with the community conversation. So that is
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. And then all right, so the ice climbing in the Swiss Alps, like you got to tell me about this. When did this happen? What was that like? Where like what mountain did you climb? Like all that stuff. This is cool.
I it was when I was in college. I was doing a term abroad in Copenhagen, Denmark,
Mm-hmm.
and did a trip. Um, the place where I grew up in New Paltz, New York, is known for rock climbing. So I'd done a lot of rock climbing.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I would try ice climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think about it, like Gavin's 15 and like I think I was 19 at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
if like I would kill him if he did that. But I just, signed up and went, and I was in Interlaken, Switzerland. It was awesome. It was really cool.
That's so cool. That's awesome. It's really cool. Yeah, I've done more ice climbing than I've done rock climbing, and I mean, like it's incredible to watch people that can just go up these crazy routes that are just seem
Right.
like near impossible. Like it like seems easy when you watch it, but like when you actually do it, and you're like you have just a greater respect for it. And then the people that are like the crazies that do it, the free soloing, like is a
Oh
whole
god,
nother.
I
It's just
didn't even
not.
understand it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. But that's so cool. Yeah, ice climbing's no joke. It's super hard. The dried worms.
I don't
It's
know.
such a fun
It's hard to
fun
come
thing.
up with these two truths and a lie
No,
situation on the spot,
some of the these are good. These are good. This stumped me. I got a win here though. I got to put the W on the paper.
I
Um,
know.
but Steph, this is so great. I really appreciate you being on the community conversation today. It was awesome to kind of learn more about you, and for the community at Prototype to learn some cool stuff about you. For the folks that are listening, you guys can tune into this. We're getting this going every week. You guys can listen to the community conversation on our Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts. Also have this on YouTube and our blog as well. So stay tuned for new episodes of the community conversation. But Steph, again, appreciate you being on, and thanks so much
Thank you.
for being here today.
Okay, take care.
All right.